Right, so part two, putting the trumpet back together again. So as you saw in the last video, we managed to find some bits in a skip, but we have found some better stuff now. I've got a new old stock ring gear, and the planet gears, we've got a good second-hand hole carrier with a pulled apart, replaced the bearings in it as you'll see, and used them gears. And the trumpet that come out of a skip, that is the one we've used, and it is in good nick and bit of a clean up, and she'll go again. On the rebuild, our first job is to rebuild the middle gear carrier. That takes our 3 gears, obviously this being our damaged gears. We've got 2 second-hand ones. There's the 3rd second-hand one that we've now got put together. So they have got a bit of wear and tear to them, but it's not. Just see where stuff's gone through them in the past. There's nothing major. We couldn't, we've got to use what we could get hold of, really. Annoyingly, these are all built up using individual bearings. So our first step, to make it easier, here's a top tip for you. If you've got a gear with internal bearings, is to take your gear and then super glue the back end shim to it. And just cut little blobs. It'll break off the second you start using it. That'll hold it together for you to assemble it. A couple of small little dots. Just to hold it together. So our next job is now to reassemble it with these bearings. You see, all the old rubbish ones are in here. There's a few of them that are cracked and got chunks missing out of them. So we've got a new set here. But they're all built individually, so we have to put them in one at a time and then into here. So we do that with a bit of oil. They need oiling anyway, but this is what holds them together. Glues them all together. So, right, ready? Right, that is our first row done. As you can see. Give that a little bit of oil. Then we get the middle shim. Right, that's done. And now we get to repeat the process again. So, last bearing of the last gear, all together. And you see that shim now holds it together, so they can't all just fall out. Because there's no lip, there's no recess for them, they can just fall through. But the first time it takes any hard work, just breaks the super glue. So these are held in by these pins, which have a cutout here for one of these circlips to slot into. And a common reason for failure on these 5000 back axles is, as you can see, there's ever so slight bits of wear on these circlips. You can just see there. I mean, this is, let me choose the bad one. It's really starting to cut into it. And eventually that'll wear through, that'll snap, that pin will drop out. And it's not good for business. So we take our first gear and place him in. And then we drop this pin down through the top. Need to be right lined up, if not you'll knock the bearings out. So we're finally made, now we're a couple of days late because typically I got hold of the wrong end seal, which is the first bit that goes onto the half shell when we're building it. So our first job now is to sit the seal on the bearing and then we can start putting it together. put the seal on. Now we need a bearing. The bearing's just come out of the oven. So that slipped right down to its shoulder. No need to knock it on or bang it on. Just sit it at 150 degrees. We'll now wait for that to cool down. And we'll fit it to the trumpet. Inside the oven is our new trumpet. And we're heating that up so we can press the gear in. So everyone loves a little bit of new old stock. We've managed to get ourselves a new gear. Underneath all this packing tape, greaser's paper that is going to take some getting off. We got ourselves a brand new gear. So I'll now get that cleaned up and ready. So the gear has been in the freezer. I don't know if you can hear that now, but we're now fully home. That's now sizzling. So obviously when you heat the casting up, it expands by a few thou, and we've frozen the gear to shrink a few thou. Once that's now equalised in temperature, that ain't ever going to move anywhere. And you can hear we're fully home, because you can hear as we tap that gear, that's transferring to the trumpet and then onto the floor. So now really it's a case of having a cup of coffee and waiting for the temperatures to equalise. Our next job now is to drop the shaft into the trumpet. That is a bit of a pain because the seal not only seals the oil from coming out, but sort of retains the shaft in for when you're assembling it together. So it is a little bit of a faff. First job being just to wipe out the bearing. And give her a splash of oil. You got to hold it in because I'm not going to break the chair. So our next job now is, if Josh spots the other side so we know we're trying to go level. We've got to try and knock the seal on.
It's still high here.
On it. That is now all the way down. You do have to fold the tabs over and stake it in to help the end seal, but we'll do that once it's together and all held in position. So now, Josh, we've got to lift this up and put it on a workbench.
Without pulling the shaft out.
Without pulling the shaft out. Technically you can do it upside down. We'll see. So, now we're going to drop our gear carrier in, which generally is about the finger nip of 3000. So as you can see, so we've got our ring gear around the outside, got our gear carrier with our planets, and we've got our sun gear that goes in the middle. So this is a 3-to-1 gear ratio, and we call this an Epicyclic gear train. And the reason this is in here is to increase torque to the wheels. So we do this by sacrificing speed. And what's the point of doing that? Why add all the extra gears and not just make the torque? Why put this in the final drive housing and not just increase and have the torque you want all the way from the get-go? Well, I'll show you two shafts side by side now. So these two shafts side by side on the bench, you can really see the size difference between before the hub reduction, the Epicyclic gear train, and after. Now, if you imagine, if you didn't create that torque there and reduce the speed, how big the shafts would have to be throughout the the half shaft into the diff into the gearbox, and then the input shaft from the clutch, and how big the clutch would have to be. It's just not doable. So always try and up the torque at the very end. Same with why you've got hub reduction and stuff on the big heavy haulage lorries. So obviously we got a new bearing on the bottom here. We've got the bearing on the end of the shaft. So now we need to preload them to set them up. And we do that by means of shims under the plate that holds the carrier. So this is our first shim we're going to try and see if we can get the preload correct. That is now in. It's shimmed, and we picked the first shim we picked out actually works. So that is nicely. And that is done by rotational force needed to pull this. Quite like the locking washer on these. So the camera picks it up. And that neatly drops into the bolt heads down here. And stops them turning. I think that's quite a neat little design. So now we've got the gears all assembled up, and we're ready to start the next phase of the final drive unit. Our final drive's done, but what else is in here is the brakes. It has wet inboard brakes. So we have a back plate to put on. That's our back plate, which now caps off the final drive itself. And now we can start putting the brakes together. So this final drive unit has what they call wet multi-plate discs. And it's a twin pack, which means we have two of these, which is a friction disc, brake plate, and then another friction disc. So we'll get these cleaned up, and then I'll show you how the brakes work. This is the lock-in pin that stops the plate spinning. If you want to be kind to yourself in future, bear and fit this in. So this is a wear plate. This is then a friction plate. And you'll notice that the wear plate is bolted to the housing and the friction plate is on the shaft. So this is effectively attached to the tracks. Then we get another wear plate that locates it on this groove here, and try and get him in the middle as much as you can. It makes it easier for assembly. And then we have another wear plate. So as I hold this steady, you'll see that that middle disc is turning and this one is staying still. Give this a coat of oil. To keep it lubricated the first time it spins. We got our second friction plate in. Now we move on to the brake expander, and this is what puts the brakes on or off. So I've left this in bits a minute so we can rebuild this together, and I can show you how that works. These two plates expand outwards, forcing them friction plates onto the wear plates. Is space for all these ball bearings, and there's a little bit of a ramp. Just put these in. Put them all in all. And then the second plate, index is here. So what happens is we've got one linkage bolted here and one here. Like this. What that does is that pulls, and as Josh cacks up, as these are pulled together, it lifts up, and that's what expands our brakes. What holds it together, I hear you ask? These awful friddly little springs. I might be able to film them putting on, or I might need to nick Josh to help me put them on. It's on. Last one. A little bit of a knack for this. Shame on the last one now.
I'll take it all back off again and do it again if you want.
I'll give that a miss.
Yeah, sure?
Yeah. We give her a little bit of oil. Smiley face. So now we can now put our next set of plates in. So we've got our wear material, now we've got our friction material. Put this here. Remember to get it in the middle if you can, because that does help. That is our last bit of friction material. We know we've got the expander in the middle that forces our wear material to our friction material, but we need an end plate to go on, which is this plate, and that is what the expander pushes against. This is our final piece of wear material here. We put him on. Yes, I did go back and order the last disc friction plate. Second time. She's home. Right, Josh, let's do the bolts up. Put her on the tracker. That brings us now nicely on, all tightened up, all torqued up, ready to refit to Deborah. So we'll drag the forklift out and lift that in. And time is a little bit of the essence now because we're actually booked into a show with her in not very long. So this is the differential casing that our output drive climbs up to. We're going to give him a bit of a clean. Right, let's do this. Forklift, start your engine. Forward a bit. Right, forwards. Down there. Whoa. Back down. Whoa. Up. Up. Right, back a little bit. Back. Yep. Whoa. Whoa. Yeah. Down. Low. Right, steady and forwards. In. Forward a little bit. Yep. Low. Forward a bit for me. Whoa. backwards now. So as you can see from behind me, we are now all back together again and moving. Bit of a test drive, and all goes to plan. It's all moving and steering and driving as it should, forwards and backwards, which is good. We're actually at a show of it this weekend down on the South of England showground, Battles Through History. So if you want to come and see Deborah and see us, pop down there. But for now, we'll see you guys in the next one.